Hello everyone, welcome. So I hope you're all doing well. This is the first time we ever do this, so let's see how it goes. If it's successful, then we'll do it more often. If not, then I'll do it offline. But it seems that there's quite a few people already. I'm quite happy to see that. So let's talk about Faderpunk. So Faderpunk is this big thing in the middle here. Basically, the idea came to us, Chris and I, Arthur, being me, about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, something like this, after a super booth, after we released the D8 Low, actually, because the central DAC ADC system is actually very similar between the two. It's using the same IC. So we thought about how can we use this IC to its full potential. And so one of the ideas was to create a big device with tracks that can be inputs and outputs and make it multifunctional so that one can create his own instrument. And over time, we actually refined the philosophy quite a lot. And it became the Faderpunk we really wanted to make this an instrument, something that is something that you can use and create your own thing. Hello everyone. I see it's international Copenhagen. Hi. My daughter is also called Sophia. Hello. Yeah. So the idea of today is that I'll go through what the device is for the people that are not super aware of it, and people that will watch this later as an introduction to Faderpunk. And I will explain a few details about the design, how to connect it. I'll look into how to get it well synchronized with your DAW, because that's a thing that is always a little bit of a pain point in with harder sequences. And I will also try to go through some of the apps. So I will use the manual here and just start with the first one, do the next one, and so on, and maybe we'll keep the last 10 minutes or so to answer some questions and go into details and some stuff like this. So as I was saying earlier, so we really wanted to make this an instrument and to make it very personalizable, so people can do whatever they want with it. But actually, one of the main thing is that to make it an instrument, it has to be kind of its thing, and it needs to be sort of constant. So very early on, we decided to not go for having a display. And I know that a lot of people are like, yeah, but it doesn't have a display, why, and so on. And the reason is that we actually want to introduce a little bit of friction that is actually intentional, that is meant for you to create an instrument and then you have to stick with it for a little while. And if you have always the option to change what's going on it, then it makes it quite frustrating in a way, because you always have these options that are available but you're not using them. And so we want to make this like a process that goes into the two-phase process basically in using Faderpunk. So you get it, you connect it to your laptop, you use a configurator, you change all of the applications and so on and create the setup that you want, and then use this in your live performance or your production or in the studio or whatever. And then you kind of stick with it, and then it's an instrument that you've designed. So okay. So that's a bit the introduction for the Faderpunk. Let's go a bit more into details. So there are 16 channels. Each of the channels have a jack, a fader, and a button. And there are 3 addressable RGB LEDs that change color depending on what you do. Yeah, and there is also another section here that is for the clocking connectors. So these can be also inputs and outputs. So you can send clock or receive clock. Currently, the only clock resolution that you can receive is 24 ppqn, but we are working on changing this in the future to allow any other things. Then the outputs here can be configured to send any sort of clock resolution from, I think, 24 ppqn to 4 bars, I think, something like this. But I'll get to it when we look at the configurator. There's a shift button that allows you to access some secondary functions in the there's still music. Yeah. Yeah, I'll see what I can do, but the video res, yeah, I can't really change this now. Let me see, maybe I can switch it to HD. Is it better now? My internet is also not super great at the office, so it can actually cause some issues. Yeah. Anyways, okay. I'll continue and I'll put it online in a better resolution later on if it's a problem. Yeah. So to come back to the buttons that are here, there's the shift button that is for secondary functions in the apps. So, for example, here an attenuator of the output, and here this is a scene button that allows you to save and recall the state of the device. That would be recalling only the state of the apps, but not changing apps themselves. That's actually for multiple reasons. First, the memory structure is a little bit different between the apps, so it would be quite more complicated, but also it's a safety thing because the jacks can become inputs or outputs, and changing the apps can actually create some a bit of a mess this way. And yeah. So yeah. 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 So there are a few things. So also the unit has a bunch of connectors on the back. There is USB-C, I2C, that is to connect to stuff like the disting, it's changing to connect to disting and other monome stuff and so on. There's a MIDI input, MIDI, and 2 MIDI outputs that are currently a copy of each other, but we'll make this addressable in the next firmware. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is that the firmware that is currently running in this unit and what I'm going to use to make the presentation is the version 1.5 that is currently in beta, but we'll share it to mainline this weekend, I think. So yeah, it's like now it's working well and we're happy with it. A few things about Faderpunk as well. Faderpunk, it's not only a device, but it's also a community. We have a Discord that is quite active, and I'm quite happy about it. This is where as well people would join the beta. And to join us on the Discord, there are a few ways to do it. The easiest is to go to faderpunk.cv and then click on the little Discord icon here, and this would like invite you to the Discord. Yeah. So we share the links for the beta there, and then you can weigh in on the functionalities, make suggestions as well. So we have a whole section here where people can make suggestions, report bugs, and so on. That then we try and include as much as possible to the limits of our abilities, of course. Yeah. Okay, so I would say let's start by showing a bit how the device works and how to actually get it to configured. So let's restart it entirely. I disconnect it, and when you connect it, then you've got beautiful light show, and then you go on faderpunk.io. I'm currently running the beta, but yeah, then press connect device, connect here Faderpunk, and then you arrive in the configurator. So you would be greeted with a standard layout that has the control app 16 times. I have a little Turing machine that I was using to play some notes on the Streichfeld. And yeah, so first thing you would do generally is to go in the settings and set the your clock source. So here I've set it to USB. By default, it would be set to internal. And yeah, so here you can set it. Well, I set it to USB because I'm going to use a DAW to show how to set it up there. You also have access to a few things. You can change the internal tempo. You can also have an external reset source. So sending a trigger to one of these inputs is going to reset the unit. Yeah, and then you have a quantizer, but a quantizer is a general on the entire units, or there are apps that run, that send quantized CV and quantized MIDI. The quantizer would be affecting both MIDI and CV, and so that allows you to play things a bit more melodically. We have a bunch of scales available, so they are available here directly on the configurator, so you can change the tonic and the scale, but you can also do it on the device by pressing scene and then moving this button here, and this would change the scale. So we will change a little bit the color feedback, but you can see here in the manual which color corresponds to which scale. Then I2C mode, these are the auxiliary jacks functions. So here by default the first one is set to a 24 ppqn resolution, but you can set it to 6 ppqn, for example, to work with your rack. You can change the luminosity of the device, so make it super bright or less bright, depending on what you need. I know this is a bit difficult to see the LEDs here in these conditions with the lights here, but yeah. One thing that is quite new and that we just introduced in the V1.5 is that now you can actually save your layouts, so your setup. So this would save all of the apps, the app layout, all of the parameters that are in the apps, as well as for all the settings. And to make it easier, when you save a setup, you can add a little description here, write whatever you want, and let's say yeah, and let's say hello here when you save it, and then you can recall it by selecting. So here I'm selecting the one I just created, then press load, and it would tell you, you would have the description here so that you can remember what this is for. And then you have the choice that you recall all of the, it will recall the layout itself, but you can also choose to recall the parameters or not, and recall the configuration. So depending on whether you are changing all this, so you can select this. Yeah. Another thing as well, you can do a factory reset, which I'm going to do now, so then I can show you exactly where you're starting from. And then we'll get to set it up in Bitwig because I'm running Linux and that's the only DAW that I can use. Oh, okay. So, you've probably seen the Faderpunk make its light low again because I reset I resetted it to the factory preset. So now memory has been wiped and it goes back to exactly how it was to start with. So first thing you do, you connect to the device, then you get this. And then let's do it again. Go into settings, go to here and set it to MIDI USB. And you need to save for this to become effective. Now let's go to Bitwig that I opened earlier. So go into your settings, then you have your Faderpunk, make sure that the synchronization is sent there, and then make sure that the MIDI is on. So that would be like this for most of the DAWs. Let's start by going there and then clearing the layout, and then let's add a control app. So the thing is, when you add an app, there are some default values here. This would always be the same. So if you add multiple times the control app, they will all be sending to the same MIDI CC. So make sure that you change this before you start doing stuff. Yeah, and in Bitwig, to map something to MIDI, it's very simple. You press here, you say map control or key, and then you move one. And then now you're in control. So yeah, you've got a mute here. Another thing that you need to do with working with the DAW and hardware sequencer is to set your clock delay or latency or whatever you call it. So the way you do this, I've added an app that sends MIDI notes, so a Turing machine here in this case. Then you need to create a track. It's already created, and then go and set it to receive MIDI notes from your device. Start the clock. So yeah, don't know if you can see, but now is my video stuck? Let me restart this. Okay. Always the choice of using this stuff. Okay. Okay, here we are. Okay, I've got my video feed again. Sorry about that. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so I have now a Turing machine running, and if we go in Bitwig here, we can select an instrument, select a MIDI input, in this case Faderpunk, make sure to select the right channel. And then what you do is that you just record some MIDI. Of course it didn't record MIDI, which is weird. Because I'm not recording the right channel, of course. Okay, yeah, here it is. So you record some MIDI, and then you stop the clock. Then you zoom in, and you'll see the notes are actually a little bit delayed here. And then you measure actually the space that you have here. So here in this case it's 18 milliseconds. So then you go into settings, resynchronization here, and then you put the same thing, 18 up. Then try again. And as you see that your notes are exactly in the right time. So that's the first thing to do. It's valid for Faderpunk, but it's also valid for a lot of other sequences, hardware sequences that are sending MIDI. So yeah, so that's the first thing to do. Then what I think we can do is maybe get into the nitty-gritty of some of the apps. So let's start with the first one. So in the manual, first one is control. Okay, I'm gonna have to mute Discord. Anyways, so yeah, control actually is meant to give you the experience of sorry, somebody's spamming. Okay. So control is meant to be a standard MIDI controller. So whether you want to use it for CV, for MIDI, or in your DAW and so on, and it sends MIDI and CV at the same time, so you can actually use it to control multiple things at the same time and play around with this. So yeah. So first thing I would show is how to use it to control a, so I showed already how to map it to a volume, but the thing is we've also designed it so that you can use it for other things, because the 0 is not always meant to be at the bottom in some of the things. For example, for a panning, so let me add another, let's remove the Turing machine and add another control. As I said, you know, make sure to change the MIDI CC to something else. So yeah, now I have a second one, and it's not doing anything in the DAW, but we can map it to here, for example. And now I have pan control. The thing is, if I put it to 0, then it would go at the full left, which is not what you want with a with panning. So you go into parameters, and then you can change the range. So if you set it to a bipolar range, so plus -5, like here, save it. Then now, when you turn it off, then it actually goes to the middle. One really nice thing as well with control is that it has an internal attenuator. So what does this mean is that it will limit the range of output of the CV output. But also the MIDI one. So if you can see here, you know, you can actually bring the volume at maximum. So if I start this little loop, but it's gonna get too loud. So what you want to do to avoid that kind of things, I know Bitwig has tools to do this, but you can also reduce the whole range. So usually what I do is that I put it at maximum, then press shift to access the attenuator, and then set the maximum value. And then here it's you have control, then fine control over the volume of your things, and you also have safety because you cannot go louder than what you don't want to. There are a few other little nifty features that we've added. You can change the way the mute button reacts, so either it's on release or on pressing. So that means that it's actually quite nice when you have to press multiple buttons at the same time, if you like making transitions by preparing yourself, so you have a bunch of them and then you press the button and then you let it go and then it does its thing. You can also invert the functions. That actually does everything. So basically at the minimum that it would be loudest, and then maximum it would be the quietest. And of course, like most of the apps where the color doesn't really do anything, you can change it. So here, for example, you can set it to green. And one thing I forgot to show, and maybe I can bring one for you, is that you also have stickers that comes with the unit, and therefore you can actually, they're meant to fit on the buttons, so you can personalize the buttons and know exactly what they do. So either you label them to know what they control, or you can actually give it some function. Let me turn off this loop. One other thing that I think is quite important that was added a little bit later in the last update is that now you have a switch that allows you to save the state or not. So as I mentioned earlier, the Faderpunk has scenes, so that means that, for example, here I set it to a certain level, save it, then I don't know, do this, then save the second one, and I can recall here. But the thing is that with volumes, and when you work with a mixer, sometimes it's actually nicer not to have this, especially if you want to do some presetting with the other apps, but not with your volume controls. You can actually turn this off. So if I do this here and I turn them off, that was in the configurator. So here, if I turn these off, then this would not happen anymore. So I can press the buttons, but it doesn't do anything anymore. And this actually allows you to have direct control and not, lose track of this stuff, which is quite handy. So yeah, so that's the MIDI side of things. Maybe I can actually turn on the modular, and I can show you also what you can do with MIDI with CV. So as I said, you can do CV control, and that allows you to control multiple things. So let's say go here. Let's make fast patch here. So I have a sine wave going into the VCA here that has a distortion control. So you can control this, but with the attenuation you can select what would be your maximum value. Let's reactivate the storing. So I do the distortion here. Let's use another cable and do something with the frequency here. Yeah. So yeah, you can create some presets basically. So I like how this sounds, and then I want to have something a bit cleaner that I can save here. And then you can change between the different sounds directly here. So you can do like some very complex stuff if you have a lot of, let's say, you get this here. Let's add some more controls. So let's say I add 2 of them. So one is controlling the wave folder, and let's say the other one is controlling it's going to be a filter control. So if I like this, let's say up. Creating some sounds here. And then now I can just recall them. So you can create some you can use, you can create your own sounds and play around with it. It seems that somebody already discovered what the Faderpunk bus is for. Yeah, cool. We'll talk about this later, but showcasing how a sequencer plays with the filter of a synthesizer. Yeah, sure, of course, we can do that. I will actually show some modulations of the MIDI synthesizer here, the Streichfett. I brought it in to actually show some nice thing. Also, it kind of fits the colors, so. Yeah, a dad called Richard, don't buy the Oxy one, just wait a few months and keep an eye on us, you'll see. What else can we say about the control app? One thing that is quite important, so let me disconnect this stuff. For modular especially, so here we have the, let's turn it on again. We've made a module a few years ago called the CDVCA that has a nice little, that has VCA basically. So now putting a square wave, but the thing is that the VCA has an exponential response, which is not always very nice, so you get like most of the response at the end when you connect the fader like this. So what we have as well here, we can actually change the response to, for example, logarithmic, and now you get a much nicer response over the whole range. So depending on the response of your controls, you can actually change this, and this actually only affects the CV out, not the MIDI, because MIDI is usually scaled properly. So yeah, it's not super needed for this. Yeah. Okay. Also the app sends MIDI through the CC connectors, so I can control some stuff in the Streichfett, but I don't think it's super interesting. That's very close. Look at the manual of your synthesizer or MIDI device, and then look at which CC you need to send, and then this should make it easy. Just set the MIDI channel, set your MIDI CC, and then you're good to go. It's super easy. Okay. Do you have any questions about the control app itself? Okay. I guess there's quite a bit of delay, so I'll start with the LFO, and then you let me know if you have a question later. Let me delete this layout, and then save it like this. You can delete the entire layout to make it simpler to create your own. Yeah. So let's start with the LFO. Well, now you now hearing the modular that is doing a thing. So the LFO is a multi-wave shape LFO. There are a few of them. So sine wave, let me put some sound. Sine wave, triangle, that's a rising sawtooth, that's a falling one, square wave, and then back to the sine wave. As with the control app, you have an attenuator, so you can actually change the from nothing to plus and minus 5 volts. But yeah, with this you can play around. Same as with the control app, you can change and save the waveform, so create your presets this way. The nice thing as well is that it's a MIDI LFO, so one can use it to actually send MIDI. So let me load an app that sends MIDI notes, because I want some sound from this. Let's put a Turing machine, save it. So I have it on channel 2. I know that my stretch is set to channel 4. Okay, I can see now notes are being received. It's muted on the mixer. Okay, so let's have some sequence. Maybe let's slow it down a little bit. So I know, for example, this knob has quite a nice effect. But the thing is that there's no way to modulate it. So I could record some automation in my DAW, but I don't always want to have a DAW. So you can go there, say I want, here it's channel 4. And I know that, I think this control is 82. And then you activate send MIDI. And now I can control this parameter here with an LFO. And actually add modulation to a MIDI device, which was not present before. And that's where you can actually, expand the capacities of a small MIDI instrument, which is not something you can always do, which is actually quite nice. And the nice thing is that then you get like a physical control here, so you can really do what you want. And then if you don't want the modulation, use the attenuator to take it down. That also means that you can actually also map it to stuff in your DAW. So if I activate here, map to control, so it I guess it took a note, a MIDI note. Yeah. So now I have the panning that is yeah, so here I've mapped it to the panning here of this channel. Not that there's any sound in it, but yeah. Also you can change the range of the USB of the LFO. So depending on whether you want it to be 0 to 10 volts or so entirely positive, or plus and minus 5. that also has an effect on the zero when you attenuate it. So it's not super obvious here. We can actually put it a bit louder. Let's play some notes again. But yeah, so if you set it to a bipolar mode here, so it would zero at the middle, but that also means that it would zero in the middle of the MIDI range, so at 64 or so, something like this. If you set it to a unipolar, so 0 to 10 volts in this case, then it would zero on the minimum at 0. So keep this in mind. That's actually valid for most of the apps, actually all of the apps. And yeah. What else can we do with an LFO? Yeah, it has it also has different ranges, so it can be either a, well, it's not super fast, but let's put this on. So it goes from about, I think, 1 minute to like half a second or quarter of a second, something like this. I can't remember exactly. But you can make it slow. So that would divide the maximum speed and minimum. It would basically divide the frequency by 2. And slowest divides by 4. So you get like some really, really slow stuff. I don't think we have the time to go through a full cycle right now. But yeah, depending on what you want to do, if you're into ambient or whatever, that actually can be quite useful. And again, you know, as always, the waveforms are, everything is safe, so you can play around and make your own presets this way. Okay. Yeah, I think that's mostly it with the LFO. It is now 4:43, so we can go to the next step. So we've done the LFO. If there is no questions about it, then maybe we can move to the envelope. So the AD envelope. Yeah, let's do that. So let's keep the LFO so that we can trigger the envelope. Save it here. Okay, let's add the AD. Where is it? Here. So 2-channel 1. Here. So the envelope is now loaded here. Let's use an LFO to trigger it. So I've connected the LFO output here. You can see that now the envelope is getting triggered by the LFO. So there is an indicator here of the state of the gate. Attack and decay are being displayed here. You've got 2 faders, one for attack, the other one for decay, and the jacks. The first jack now is an input, second one is an output. So you connect it this way, and then you can trigger your envelope. This is not the only way to trigger this envelope, and I'll get to this later. Actually comes into the concept of the MIDI to CV that we want to implement. I think at some point I'll make a video all about MIDI to CV, because I think there's quite a lot of stuff to say here, and can be actually quite interesting for people to see. Yeah, so the envelope. In this, you don't have that many parameters. You just have whether it uses MIDI and yeah, whether it uses MIDI and which MIDI channel. But we'll get to this a bit later. So it's a standard AD envelope. It's quite simple. Let's get the modular to make some sound. And then take the output. And just connect it to VCA. So yeah, you've got attack and decay like any other envelopes. Where it is a little bit different is that it's got multiple modes and multiple shapes per how do you call this? Well, the attack and the decay basically. So you can change here by pressing here when you're in the main. So that's linear, exponential, and logarithmic. Yeah, so that allows you to do some, like, change the nature of the sound and adapt it to also the device that you're using. And like most of the other apps, if you press shift, you can use the fader next to the output to control the amplitude of the. So you can use this as a performance tool as well. And get a much nicer range of control for your filter, for example, like here. You also have multiple, how do you call this? Multiple modes. So now we are, the default when it's yellow, that's AD envelope. So you trigger it and it goes up and down, and that's it. If you press again, now you're in ASR, so it will remain high as long as the output of the or the input is high, the gate is high. And then you have a looping AD. So if I put it slower, faster. So as long as the gating is high, then it will repeat. Yeah. One more thing as well is that you don't need to have a long gate. So let me turn this on. Let me put this into clock source internal. Okay. You know what? Let's clock it from the Faderpunk. So I'll show you how to do it. So up, go. It's internal clocking. Let's go back to MIDI USB, and let's set this to 6 ppqn. Save it. And yeah, so now it is sending up a clock from this jack into here, and then we can use the Elixir Clid, our nice little Euclidean sequencer to trigger the envelope. It's going to be nicer. It's going to be actually more realistic. So let's change the rhythm to something. Let's go 16. Okay, and then go to 1. So yeah, now I'm going to demonstrate the trigger to gate functionality. So if you go here in the manual, it says here if you press shift and this fader, you actually you can set a trigger to gate converter. So the trigger to gate, what it would do is that it would maintain the gate high without it would just listen to the raising edge of the gate and not care about the falling one. So if I increase here, since I'm in looping mode, I can just make it loop for a certain amount of time. And then here you see this LED would flash for the time that it would remain high. So you see here, just triggering once, it continues for much longer. Let's make a very short envelope. And if you put it at maximum, it would basically stay high forever. So this way then you can actually turn this into a variable shape LFO. But depending on the mode, actually, you can do different things. So, for example, if you're into AD, the trigger to gate, let's make this trigger more often. Sound like this. Now we have this rhythm going on, and the trigger to gate actually allows you to stop the envelope from triggering too often. So you can use it to do some gate trigger filtering, basically. And when you are into, let's set it to 1 again. If you're into ASR, you make it remain high for a longer time. Which is quite useful when you do URAC and like modular sequencing, because usually a lot of the sequencing relies on triggers, and you can't really set the length of your nodes. So that's why AD envelopes tend to be more popular. But yeah, so that's a way to get around this and to make it a little bit more flexible. Yeah. So, yeah, one other thing that I mentioned earlier, let's disconnect this, is that you can trigger the envelope with MIDI. So let's create a little sequence here. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's do this here, and then I'll send MIDI to the here Faderpunk. Here we have to go here, device, AD envelope, use MIDI, and channel 1 here. And when we save, now you see that the envelope actually gets triggered, but that actually is triggered from the sequence that is here. So the idea here is when you do MIDI to CV conversion, you might want to, anyway, when you do in MIDI to CV conversion, when you're triggering gates, in about 80 to 90% of the cases, you're going to want to trigger an envelope. So to save you a channel of Faderpunk, or to make it simpler in general, we made it so that you can trigger the envelope directly from MIDI. So this way, when you do MIDI to CV conversion, instead of using a MIDI to gate converter, there is an app for that, you can just use an envelope, and then you actually have directly your envelope without having to use a channel for MIDI to CV, and then trigger another channel, put some wires and so on. So yeah, that's a way to make it a little bit more flexible. So yeah. Yeah. Do we have time for another app? It's 5 o'clock. Okay. I guess we can take some questions. I'm gonna write this here. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, I guess you can do a quick one. Random CC and CV. So that's pretty simple. Here, I'll add it here. So now it's there. You can see it's actually clocked. As with the LFO. Oh yeah, I forgot to say something with the LFO. You can. Oh yeah, actually, very good question about the firmware updates. So okay, so 1.5, we introduced the main thing is to introduce this the layout setup saving thing. We also have 2 more apps that will be introduced that are called Panner and Clock Divider, which is quite obvious what they do. 1.6 is actually going to be a big one, and most likely going to take a little bit longer, because this will bring all of the MIDI routing. So basically you will be able to send MIDI to the USB and then choose to do full MIDI through and just use one of the outputs to do a MIDI through, or merge it as well with the MIDI that comes from the device. You can also do some MIDI filtering. Some MIDI filtering for clock and transport. You will also be able to route the individual apps to different outputs. So you can, in the configurator, in the parameters, you can directly say, oh, I want this app to only send to MIDI USB, or only to MIDI 1 or MIDI 2, which will make the routing a lot easier. Yeah, so there will be all of the things for MIDI itself, and how you can route it around. So it will actually become a quite powerful MIDI router as well. Yeah. Other than that, I'm working on some more apps. There is another sequencer that it's going to be more of a generative thing. It's basically the sequencer, like sequencing system I've been using live since forever. So yeah, I'll be happy to finally share it with the world. I actually made a prototype module. If I'm here. So yeah, I made this a long time ago. Well, last year actually. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense to release it now. So what I'll do is that I'll import the code into the Faderpunk itself. What else? Yeah, more apps. There will be a new version of the Control app, where the button will be sending MIDI CC, and the fader sends another MIDI CC. Yeah, a bunch of stuff like this. Yeah, so that's basically, yeah, the MIDI is going to be the big thing, and then sequencer and new types of control apps is going to be the next one. Yeah, yeah. So that's another thing as well. Indeed, the that was a request that came quite early. We will implement it as soon as possible. It's a little bit more involved. There's quite a bit of work, but we will do different types of fader catch because currently it's what's called catching, basically. when you change the value of the fader and recall a scene, you have to catch the value before it you regain control. Now, or in the future, you will be able to set this to different modes. So either a direct, so as jump basically, as soon as you move, as soon as it detects a new value, then it jumps to the new value from the fader. Or a relative mode. So when you move the fader, it will still have an effect on the sound until it catches the value, and then you're in full control. So yeah, we're working on this. This will come hopefully in the next update. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, that's definitely something that's coming. So yeah, the relation between Faderpunk and 16N is it's okay. So I mean, it's a question that we get a lot. The 16N, we used to make it. We used to make the 16N rework. I also worked on the firmware itself, and so I actually implemented the MIDI through stuff, a few other little improvements, and then made a rework of the hardware and made it open source as well. The reason why we decided to change and do our own things it's that actually. It's basically I don't really want to take credit for other people's work, so I decided to do we decided to do our own thing and go our own direction. However, we still wanted to keep some of this open sourceness and to allow people to learn from the open source community and so on. So because this is what where I came from, where Chris as well comes from. So we both learn from people sharing their knowledge online. So what we are also doing is that we will, well, it's actually already the case. If you go on GitHub here, the whole firmware of the Faderpunk is open source. And if you go into here, Faderpunk source apps, and here you actually have the codes for each of the apps. So for example, the AD envelope that I just described, all of the code is here. So the idea is also to share this and allow people to do their own things. We have the plan on doing some tutorials, a bit like this, a live stream or some pre-recorded videos, let's see, about how to program for it. So so why did we decide to have a maximalist approach? So that was just because we can, really. So the thing is, there was a lot of things when we were presenting Faderpunk on trade fairs and so on. So lots of people are like, oh, is it a mixer? Is it a sequencer? Is it this? Is it that? So jokingly, internally, we were like, oh yeah, so the Faderpunk is, the answer is always yes, because it can be anything, really. You can just design it to do anything, can change all of the functions. So yeah, it's an exercise in design for us, and so we just wanted to kind of like make it a little bit more economical in the sense. So because the 16N allowed you to control other things, but a lot of things actually could be directly into the unit itself. So yeah, that's the idea. Like take everything that you used to control externally, put it into your system, into the Faderpunk, and make it one nice little box with all of the scene saving and recall and so on, so that you can perform with it. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess that would be it. It's past 5. I need to go and pick up my kids. So I wish you all a super nice evening. It was really nice to hang out with you. I think that went well enough so that we can actually do it again next week. Can go through some more apps and have some fun. Feel free for the people that are not there yet. Please join the Discord. The little button is up there. There is my camera here. Up. Here. Button is here. Click on it. Join the Discord. Join the beta. Then give us some feedback and so on. We take all of this very seriously. We are super happy to serve you in a way by implementing as many of the features that you're requesting. We're just 2 people working on this. One of them being part-time, so it will take a little bit of time before we can implement everything, but we'll do our best. See you next week, I guess. And have a great one, and I will